So, after the end got updated for the Count of the Step DLC, and I got around to playing it about a month later, just in time for it to be out of date with the Coronations DLC. Oh well, I guess I'm gonna have to roll back the game to an earlier version. Thank God for the beta participation option on Steam. Now I don't really mind having to do that, as I was quite excited about the addition of the Nomad mechanics to After the End. I don't know, something about the idea of horse lords and the American Prairie really rubs me the right way. The start screen offers us a new tab, The Untamed West, with a few recommended characters. I'll check them out, but I gotta say, I'm leaning towards the guys with the feather hats. There's Gordon the Greasy, a guy who follows the Soil Tapper faith. They basically believe that oil is sacred. He is described as patient and cautious, with a desire to unite the Soil Tapper holy sites. There's Zoria the Red, apparently a bloodthirsty conqueror who might just forge an empire. There's the High Chieftain of the Dakotas over here, who is apparently 90 years old. There are the Garlands of the Front Range, who could ally the Nebraskans due to a marriage at the start of the game. And to the very south, there's High Chief Isavura of Red River. He is a Comanche, a Native American culture that apparently survived into the time period of After the End. I like the idea of conquering North America for the natives, so that's what I'm gonna play. Isavura is not just the same culture that exists IRL, but he also follows a faith that's particularly faithful to the real-world Native American religions. We are one of the Paiotist faiths. Paiotism is basically a mix of real Native American traditions and Christianity. But unlike the Sundance and Crossfire faiths to our north, our Half-Moon faith skews towards the Native American traditions. All that combined makes Isavura the perfect choice for a Native American conquest game. He is zealous, ambitious and chaste. We do start as a king, but we don't have a lot of troops, so I'll play it cautious for now. Since as a nomad, martial is probably the most important lifestyle, I choose it to build up my character. I consult the stars, and the stars give me some dating advice, increasing my fertility. Also, since we are pretty much the only realm that follows the Half-Moon faith, I have my tributaries convert. We have our own equivalent to the Nurge, the driving run. Our character is well suited for it, and I'm easily able to fill up the success bar. 50 dread, 500 prestige and 200 gold and legitimacy. All for the price of a few herd. With our Sacred Hunts tradition, we can do this every 2 years if we want to. This is the first time this playthrough I was reminded of just how OP nomads are. While I wasn't stronger than any of my neighbors, I did have about the same number of troops, and I figured I could raid them a bit. So I raised my raiding party and set out. In the base game, nomads don't take attrition while on the steppe. I quickly realized that the Prairie does not work the same way. I couldn't even leave my tributaries' lands without taking attrition. So that was a bit of a bummer. But I did find a suitable raiding target eventually. The Sequoia to our east bordered my realm directly, which gave me some room to raid. And further east is the Mississippi River system. It turns out that just like Norse raiders in the base game, we don't take attrition next to great rivers. The Sequoia did try to defend themselves, and they had more troops and a decent commander. The game was saying I would probably lose, so I was a little nervous. But they attacked me across a river into a forest, and my nomad horde riders as well as prairie archers were able to fight them off. With the gold I accrued, I could upgrade my nomadic capital. And like all things nomad, some of these upgrades are ludicrously powerful. Like Square of Commoners that would at level 1 increase my army movement by 10%, army damage by 10% and increase my maximum men-at-arms regiment size and number. Just at level 1, mind you. At the highest levels, those army bonuses go up to 30% faster movement and 50% more damage for horde riders, the majority of your army. Not to mention other buildings like Warrior's Stand giving you equally ludicrous bonuses for your champions. But I decided that before I invest into bonuses for my army, I would invest in the economy. Or the nomadic version of the economy anyway. So instead of building the Square of Commons, I built big corn storage. And yes, just like the steppe of the base game, you can become the equivalent of the Khan of Khans in the Prairie. And doing that is what's going to allow us to do a lot of conquest crazy fast. But we have a long way to go before we can proclaim ourselves the Chief of Chiefs. Before I can take unrestricted dominance to become the Chief of Chiefs, I have to take absolute dominance with a 30,000 herd. Absolute dominance is also what's required to become Emperor, and a good next step is becoming the Emperor of Texas. If I want to become the ruler of Texas, I should also take more land within the area, as when I try to dominate that title, all non-tributary rulers in Texas will declare war on me. Best to take them on one by one. I upgraded my Prairie archers to help with that. And to help me speed up my herd growth, I decided to scheme to steal herd from my neighbors. Unfortunately, that only got me a couple hundred herd at a time, so I decided it wasn't worth it. Now, the Garland alliance with the Nebraskans never came to anything, and they seem to have gotten wrecked in some battle that left them with less than 300 troops. It's a perfect opportunity to use my enlarged Prairie archers to bring their relatively large realm under my tribute. They must have had some army movement bonuses, cause catching them was the hardest part of the war, and I guess technically I never did catch them. I caught their allies instead, but it was enough to win me the war. I raided some more after the war, and during the raiding I got my first dynasty legacy, giving me some extra herd and fertility. The raiding expedition went well. I had enough supplies to raid all the way to Louisiana, where the Louisianans tried to fight me off. They failed, but they did kill enough of my troops that they couldn't carry any more loot, so I suppose they did accomplish what they wanted. So good for them. As I came back home with my raiding band, a tributary actually tried to stop paying tribute. Now he did have a good amount of troops, and my army was still weakened from the raiding expedition, so the fight wouldn't be easy. I was able to get him to attack me across a river, and just as I was able to win the battle, the Garlands also broke away. It turns out that the guy who rebelled first was the one connecting my realm to the Garlands. And while he was rebelling, they weren't technically connected to me by land, so they had the option to just stop paying tribute without even giving me the option to fight back. I hired some nomad heavy cavalry to make myself feel better. Oh, and I had also hired some siegemen at arms. We don't have the technology for it, but as nomads we can hire men-at-arms our tributaries have access to, so we're all set to siege down any holding within a reasonable amount of time. A little while after the Garland breakaway, the prairie seasons changed. My area went from abundant grazing, the second best season, to cold winter, reducing my fertility and herd gain significantly. But that was just in my area of the prairie. In the north, the Great Plains region, it was everlasting summer. Which is a problem, as while I had the greatest herd out of anyone on the prairie, the second and third largest herds were in the north. I didn't want to be taken over, so I declared a humiliation war on the Prairiansky to take a large chunk of their herd for myself. The leader of the Prairiansky is Zoria the Red. And it's interesting that the culture is called Prairiansky. That sounds like a Russian word for Prairian. So what's the story there? Is there like a Russian community there in real life that went on to take over the entire region in after the end, or what? Yep, just checked Wikipedia and it turns out a lot of people in that part of Canada claim Russian heritage. Anyway, the war. It took a little while to get to the Prairiansky all the way down from Texas, and when I got there, there was no one there. They were busy fighting another war, so I started sieging down their stuff. After a while, they came back, and my army was fairly spent from all the sieging by that point, and I didn't think I could win in a straight fight. But they were reluctant to attack me as well. So it was a sieging race. If they besieged their capital before I could get 100% war score, we would have to fight them directly if we want to win the war. It came down to just a few days, but we won the last siege and got their 4,000 herd. My next target was Lakota. They are the third most powerful realm, and they used to be ruled by a 90-year-old. But it looks like he was replaced by another old guy. When he dies, they would probably lose a bunch of herd. But I don't want them to lose a bunch of herd. I wanted herd. This war was substantially more easy. I had replenished my troops and I managed to catch his army quickly. In the first battle I captured the old guy and got myself another 4k herd. I was now up to 25,000 herd. I need 5 more to go up to absolute authority. But my vassals were a little angry at me because of these offensive wars. So I decided to collect the last 5,000 herd in peace. By which I mean raiding. After a while I could go up one level to absolute dominance. This gave me, among other things, the ability to become emperor. I wasn't powerful enough to fight every single realm in Texas at once, so I was gonna declare tributary wars to bring them under my rule one by one. I started with the Granglanders. I had some trouble with them, but after hiring a couple of mercenary companies I brought them under my power. Then I turned to the Garland Granglanders, the people that were under my tribute briefly, until they broke away because of a technicality. Just a few months after I declared war, a peasant faction spawned with 7,000 troops. I had forgotten how scary the nomadic peasants can be. Hoping to win the Garland war quickly, I let them siege down a few of my counties. That was a mistake, as it made their army grow to 8,000 troops. When I finally brought my army back, they were too powerful to stop. When I had to give in to their demands, I lost everything. All my vassals and all my personal domain. I now had no land, but thankfully I wasn't unlanded. I still had my kingdom level title and my herd, as well as my tributaries. I figure my tributaries will soon start breaking away if I don't get land quickly, so I declared war on one of my former vassals. Just before I won the war, the county my nomad capital was in somehow flipped to me. Man, I don't know what's happening in this game sometimes. The peasants who had taken everything from me were now my neighbors, calling themselves the Wichita Falls Texans. But their 8,000 troops had disappeared, and since I still have my herd, I can raise a large army. I can't declare war on them yet though, because we have a truce. I could ask them to become my tributaries, but I want my land back, not tribute. So while I'm waiting for the truce to expire, I expand my influence some more. I take land from some herder, and I demand that some others become my tributaries. I also fight an internal war to take the land from my new old vassal to increase my personal domain. Later I got my revenge against the Wichita Falls Texans, but I could only vassalize them for now. Over the years I expanded my influence across the prairie to an even greater extent than what I had before I lost all my land. I even brought the Garlands back under tribute. While I was fighting another war against my now vassal Wichita Falls Texans, Isavura died. He was leading an army against them, and when he died of old age, that caused me to almost lose the battle. But I was able to reinforce them in time. I took it easy for the first few years of my second character's reign. I raided for herd, as well as for the bonuses the raider trait gives you. I built up my prestige by holding driving runs. I upgraded my nomad capital some more. Now I actually started building stuff that would make my army stronger. By this point my army was so powerful that none of my neighbors could realistically defeat me. Up until this point I was mostly fighting other nomads, and all I was doing was making them into tributaries. Now I started moving south, into the feudal lands of Texas. And I wasn't tributizing them, I was conquering them. Eventually I reached the sea, but I wasn't done, I continued to conquer. I was mostly using duchy level CBs, except once I used a kingdom invasion to take an annoying realm that was spread over 3 different duchies. When I was finally ready to click the button to dominate Texas, only a couple of one-county miners tried to fight me. Soon enough, the empire title of Lone Star was mine, although its name changed to Comanche, and disappointingly its flag changed to my coat of arms. Then I finished up the conquest of Texas. What the heck happened to this guy? I made Louisiana a tributary, and also the Front Range again, which had at some point become independent, probably when the Garlands were kicked off the throne. After that, I had racked up quite the offensive war penalty, so I let it go down for a while. I did the usual, holding driving runs, upgrading my nomadic capital, feasting, ransoming prisoners captured in various wars and raids. I reorganized my vassals into dukes. I made all my vassals and tributaries convert to my faith. I also peacefully added new tributaries when I could and vassalized all tributaries in my de jure empire. Eventually I had spread all over the prairie, the Lakotas collapsed, and the Prairianski were pretty much the only nomads that weren't my tributaries. But they did have a decent herd size, and I was getting close to the 75,000 herd I'd need to go up to maximum dominance. I decided it would be more profitable for me to just do another humiliation war and take a chunk of their herd immediately than to make them a tributary and have them increase my monthly herd gain. I have to raise my army in my realm, so it was still quite a trek to go up to them. And I had a lot bigger army this time, so the supply was more of a problem. But when I got there I outnumbered them 2-1. I won the first battle. After sieging down a few of their counties they came back for round 2, and after that the war was won. And now I'm just a couple of thousand herd away from being able to go to unrestricted dominance, and I'm at unrestricted dominance and able to declare myself Chief of Chiefs. Taking this decision will cause us to fight everyone in the Prairie who isn't our tributary, plus one powerful realm nearby. But if we win, we will get some crazy bonuses and a CB that allows us to take the entirety of our realm, no matter how big. The war for heaven and earth was fought mainly against the Prairiansky and their tributaries to our north, as well as the Republic of Mexico, who decided to join from the south and try and stop us. If they could have grouped up, they might have been able to overwhelm us. But they couldn't even group up. I broke the Prairiansky and then I went south and captured the Mexican leader. Winning the war vassalized the entire Prairie into the Comanche, my tributaries as well as the Prairiansky. In the heavens the sun, moon and stars, but on earth there can only be one Khan, chief. I guess that line still needs to be run through the old find in their place. But yes, we are now the Comanche Empire and we have access to the Great Nomadic Onslaught CB. I get to choose a new nickname, and we're ready to go. We have 75 years to solidify our control over North America. That's no problem, we just need to have a realm size of 500. I aim to have a much larger realm than that. Before I start my conquest of America, I reorganize my realm so that all my vassals are king level, except for my old vassals in the Comanche core of Texas. They can remain dukes. I also convert everyone to the Half Moon Faith, and I use all the money I got to hire more men-at-arms. In the end, I had a ludicrous amount of various types of horse archers and heavy cavalry because I can hire any men-at-arms my subjects have access to. My favorite ones are the Mardi Gras riders I got from Louisiana. I start my conquest to the east with Magnolia. They were ruled by a conqueror, and they stood no chance. My nomad army can literally siege down a castle within days, and in just 4 months Magnolia was mine. Then I bordered the HCC and the High Republic of New Orleans. The New Orleans was happy to peacefully submit, and the HCC... well, the HCC was more stubborn. But that doesn't matter. With the Great Nomadic Onslaught CB, we can get all of that. I started sieging their castles, and again it took no time at all. They didn't even try to fight me, as they were busy dealing with the Calvert Appeal, and they had peasant uprisings everywhere. Don't worry, your Imperial Majesty, I'll show you how to keep the peasants in line. Then I continued the conquest north along the coast, into the Old Dominion. But there I encountered plague well, yeah, despite my better judgment I had my character lead my army into lands plagued by tuberculosis. I conquered what I had set out to, but then just as I turned and started my conquest west, Pia died, and his son Toom took over. As Toom, I intended to finish the conquest of America, so after having a funeral for Pia, I tried to stabilize the realm, with mixed results. Most of my vassals did rebel in a war for independence that would basically just leave me with my capital, but all those special troops I got for becoming Chief of Chiefs did allow me to defeat the rebels. With all my vassals loyal or in prison, it was time to continue the conquest. But it turns out that the Great Nomadic Onslaught CB was only available to Pia. And if I wanted to conquer all of America, it would have to be done the old-fashioned way. That will not do. I reloaded to just after Pia had become Chief of Chiefs, and I resolved to do it all again. But this time, not walk into a plague. So I reorganized my empire again, conquered the HCC again, and I started conquering the West. I got the first couple of kingdoms, and it turns out that God maybe is Mormon, because just as I was about to conquer Utah, Pia died of old age. It seems that no matter what, Pia just doesn't have much life left in him after he becomes Chief of Chiefs. Certainly not enough to conquer America. If I wanted to use the Great Nomadic Onslaught CB to finish the job, I'd need to go further back, so I reloaded to before I started the war for heaven and earth. My plan is to not become Chief of Chiefs with Pia, but with his younger successor. I chose my preferred heir and spent the last years of Pia's life in relative peace. I did make sure to raid with my heir leading the army so that he would get the useful raider trait. And literally just as I had made all my subjects loyal so I would have a stable succession, Pia died. And I guess that there wasn't enough time for the game to update the succession status, as I did have a slightly chaotic succession, causing me to lose 17,000 herd. And it all went to this one random one-county miner who is a tributary to one of my tributaries. He is now the third most powerful nomad on the Prairie. Still, I had built up quite a large herd over the years where I was effectively the chief of chiefs, but not clicking the button, so that even losing 17,000 wasn't much of a problem. My new character was King Quinai. He's a young and a good martial character, but I couldn't click the button to become the chief of chiefs because I didn't have enough fame. Alright, that won't be a problem, I'll just have to do a few more driving runs and create some titles to get what I need. In the meantime, I did have to fight a rebellious tributary. The annoying thing was, I really didn't care if this guy remained my tributary or no, but if I let him go without a fight, I'd lose a bunch of legitimacy, and I can't have that. Fighting these guys was particularly annoying, as they were very far from my realm, and they were in the Rocky Mountains, so sieging them took a while. But it did bring them to heel eventually. A few years later, I was ready to get the last bit of prestige I'd need to click the button. And I did it. Fighting the war for heaven and earth the second time was a little underwhelming. Because I had spent so many years growing my power, not a lot of people were left to resist me. Only the Prairiansky and a few other small fry. And I'm the master of all earth again. But this time I have decades to play with the OP bonuses instead of just a few years. And you know the drill. I went in on the Magnolians, then on the HCC. Then I turned west and captured everything east of the Rockies. This time there was no act of God to save Utah. Without stopping, I continued on to Nevada. And later, the great Golden Empire of California fell. Then the Black Death hit. Having learned my lesson, I decided to let it pass before I continued my conquest. As nomads, we are somewhat resistant to plague, and it never even reached my capital. When it was done, I turned my sight back east. I started with Tennessee and Kentucky. Beyond them were a dozen tiny duchies and counties, most of which peacefully submitted. After that, I conquered the Catholics of Iowa and Illinois, as well as the Pope in St. Louis, then the Vikings of Minnesota. I attacked the last Americanist stronghold around Washington, declaring war on all of them at once. I quickly finished off New England and went a little beyond to Canada. I had planned to take all the land around the St. Lawrence River, but that area was ruled by the Nunavik, another Native American realm, so I left them alone. I did, however, go into North Mexico. I'm gonna solidify my hegemony over North America, making sure the empire doesn't collapse. This also gives me the option to choose what type of government I want to be. Not that it matters, but I chose administrative. So this is it. All of this is the jure part of the Comanche Empire. We have spread our faith all across the Prairie, and now that it's the state religion of our empire, it is sure to spread further. Most of our direct vassals are Comanche culture. The realm is stable, and Quinai is just 46 years old. That's the end of this playthrough. My name has been Michael. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and tell me in the comments if there's a playthrough in particular you would like to see in CK3, whether it be vanilla after the end or some other mod. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.